Marcus Rivera wiped the grease from his weathered hands, staring at the envelope that would change everything. Inside was an offer that seemed impossible, a contract that would transform his struggling garage into something he'd never dared dream of. But this wasn't just about money. This was about a single moment of kindness to a stranger who turned out to be far more than he appeared. What happens when a simple act of generosity catches the attention of someone with the power to change your entire life? Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Rivera's auto repair, highlighting every pothole and oil stain that Marcus had grown accustomed to seeing. The garage sat on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, sandwiched between a struggling laundromat and a convenience store that had seen better decades. Marcus had inherited this place from his father 15 years ago, along with the mounting debts and the stubborn hope that hard work would eventually pay off. At 38, Marcus had the kind of hands that told stories, each callus and scar a testament to engines rebuilt, transmissions fixed, and dreams deferred. His dark hair was perpetually dusted with metal shavings, and his brown eyes held the weary determination of a man who had learned to expect little but give everything. Today felt no different from the hundreds that had come before it, until the black Mercedes pulled into his lot. The car looked completely out of place against the backdrop of Marcus's modest operation. Its pristine paint job reflected the desert sun like a mirror, and Marcus could hear the purr of a well-maintained engine even from inside his office. He set down his coffee, a bitter brew that had been sitting too long, and walked outside to greet whoever had made what was likely a very expensive wrong turn. The man who stepped out of the Mercedes was impeccably dressed, despite the early hour. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and his shoes gleamed with the kind of polish that suggested they cost more than Marcus made in a week. The stranger appeared to be in his 50s, with silver hair combed back, and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. Yet there was something approachable about his demeanor as he surveyed the garage with what seemed like genuine interest rather than disdain. "Good morning," the man said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm David Wellington. I hope you can help me with something unusual." Marcus wiped his palm on his coveralls before accepting the handshake. "Marcus Rivera. What can I do for you, Mr. Wellington? If you're looking for the nearest luxury dealership, I'm afraid you've got about 20 miles to go." Wellington chuckled, a sound that carried genuine warmth. "Actually, I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm working on a project in my garage at home. Nothing too complicated, just some restoration work on a classic car. The problem is, I need a specific tool, a 3/4-inch torque wrench. And every auto parts store in the area is either closed or doesn't carry what I need. I was driving by and saw your sign." Marcus nodded, understanding the frustration of needing the right tool at the wrong time. "I've got what you need. It's not the newest model, but it's accurate and well-maintained. You're welcome to borrow it, just bring it back when you're done." The offer seemed to surprise Wellington. He tilted his head slightly, studying Marcus with renewed interest. "Just like that? You don't know me from Adam, and you're willing to lend me a professional tool?" "Tools are meant to be used," Marcus replied with a shrug. "Besides, anyone who knows enough to ask for a specific torque wrench probably knows how to treat it right. What kind of restoration are you working on?" Wellington's face lit up with the enthusiasm of a true car enthusiast. "A 1967 Mustang Fastback, original 390 big block. Found it in a barn upstate, and I've been slowly bringing it back to life. Right now I'm working on the cylinder heads, and proper torque specs are crucial for the gasket sealing." Marcus felt his own excitement building. Despite the difference in their circumstances, here was a kindred spirit who understood the satisfaction of bringing a classic engine back to its former glory. "That's a beautiful machine when it's done right. The 390 has plenty of torque, but you're smart to be precise with the head bolts. Over-torquing can warp the deck, and under-torquing will give you compression leaks." "Exactly," Wellington agreed, seeming pleased to find someone who spoke his language. "I've been restoring cars as a hobby for years, but I never get tired of the moment when everything comes together and the engine fires up for the first time." Marcus disappeared into the garage and returned with the torque wrench, a Craftsman model that had served him faithfully for over a decade. He'd bought it used when he first took over the shop, and while it showed signs of wear, he kept it calibrated and clean. Here you go. The calibration is current as of last month, and it's been reliable for me. Wellington accepted the tool with the reverence of someone who understood its value. This is incredibly generous of you, Marcus. How much do you want for the rental? No charge, Marcus said, waving off the suggestion. Just bring it back when you're finished. I've got plenty of other work to keep me busy. The businessman looked genuinely taken aback. Are you sure? This is a significant favor you're doing for a complete stranger. Marcus smiled, thinking of all the times fellow mechanics and customers had helped him out of tight spots over the years. We're all just trying to keep our wheels turning, right? Besides, I hope someone would do the same for me if I was in your situation. Wellington extended his hand again, and this time his grip lingered a moment longer. You're a good man, Marcus Rivera. I won't forget this kindness. As the Mercedes pulled away, Marcus returned to his current project, a temperamental transmission on a decade-old pickup truck. The owner, Mrs. Henderson, was a widow who depended on the truck for her house-cleaning business, and Marcus had quoted her his cost on parts with barely any markup for labor. It was the kind of generosity that kept his books in the red, but his conscience clear. The next few days passed in their familiar rhythm of diagnosis, repair, and the constant juggling of bills and priorities. Marcus worked alone most of the time, occasionally hiring day labor when a job required extra hands, but generally managing with his own skill and determination. He'd grown accustomed to the solitude, finding peace in the methodical process of troubleshooting mechanical problems, and the satisfaction of hearing an engine run smoothly after hours of careful work. On Thursday, Wellington returned as promised, the torque wrench carefully cleaned and obviously well cared for during its brief absence. He seemed genuinely pleased as he handed it back to Marcus, along with his gratitude and a detailed account of how the Mustang project was progressing. The heads went on perfectly, Wellington reported with obvious satisfaction. No leaks, proper compression on all cylinders. Your tool made all the difference in getting the job done right. Marcus accepted the wrench and gave it a quick inspection, more out of habit than distrust. As expected, it was in the same condition he'd lent it, perhaps even a bit cleaner. Glad it worked out for you. How much more work do you have left on the restoration? Months, probably, Wellington admitted with a laugh. But that's half the fun, isn't it? Taking something that's been forgotten and bringing it back to life, making it better than it was before. There was something in the way he said it that made Marcus look up from the tool, but Wellington was already reaching for his wallet. Please, let me pay you something for the use of the wrench. It saved me hours of driving around looking for one to buy. Marcus shook his head definitively. Already told you, no charge. Just glad I could help a fellow gearhead. Wellington paused in the act of pulling out his wallet, studying Marcus with an expression that seemed to blend curiosity with something deeper. You know, I've been in business for a long time, and I've learned that character reveals itself in the small moments. How someone treats a stranger when there's nothing to gain from it, that tells you everything you need to know about a BH'er person. The comment seemed oddly profound for a simple tool loan, but Marcus just nodded politely. Seems like you know your way around an engine pretty well yourself. That Mustang is lucky to have someone who cares about doing things right. After Wellington left, Marcus found himself thinking about the encounter more than he expected. There had been something different about the man, an intensity behind his casual demeanor that suggested depths Marcus hadn't fully grasped. But life in the garage demanded his full attention, and soon he was absorbed in diagnosing a mysterious electrical problem in a delivery van whose owner needed it back on the road by morning. The following week brought its usual collection of challenges and small victories. Marcus managed to keep the lights on and even made a modest profit, enough to buy groceries and put a little aside for the ever-present threat of equipment failure. His air compressor had been making concerning noises, and he knew that replacing it would eat up several months of careful savings. It was Tuesday morning when everything changed, though Marcus didn't recognize the significance of the moment at first. He was under the hood of a stubborn Chevy when he heard footsteps approaching across the concrete floor of his garage. Expecting a customer or perhaps a parts delivery, he slid out from under the hood and found himself face to face with a woman in a professional business suit carrying a leather portfolio. "Mr. Rivera?" she asked, consulting a tablet in her other hand. I'm Jennifer Walsh from Wellington Automotive Group. I believe you met our CEO, David Wellington, last week? Marcus felt a strange flutter in his stomach as the pieces began to fall into place. The expensive car, the casual mention of restoration work, the way Wellington had studied his garage with such focused attention. Wellington Automotive Group, he repeated slowly. The national chain? Jennifer smiled with the practiced warmth of someone accustomed to delivering surprising news. That's right. We operate over 300 locations across the Southwest, specializing in full-service automotive repair and maintenance. Mr. Wellington was quite impressed with his visit to your establishment. The words seemed to hang in the air as Marcus tried to process their implications. Wellington Automotive Group was a name he'd seen on billboards and television commercials, a company that represented everything his small operation was not: polished, prosperous, and backed by corporate pref. Resources that dwarfed his wildest dreams. I don't understand, Marcus said finally. He borrowed a torque wrench. That's hardly enough to impress anybody. Jennifer consulted her tablet again, scrolling through what appeared to be extensive notes. According to Mr. Wellington's report, you demonstrated exceptional customer service, technical knowledge, and business integrity. You provided assistance to a stranger without expectation of compensation. And you showed genuine enthusiasm for automotive craftsmanship. These are exactly the qualities we look for in our franchise partners. The term franchise partners hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd heard of mechanics being offered franchise opportunities, but they were usually established shop owners with proven track records and substantial capital. His operation was held together with determination and duct tape, hardly the foundation for corporate expansion. I think there's been some mistake, Marcus said carefully. I'm not franchise material. I can barely keep this place running as it is. Jennifer's smile didn't waver. That's exactly why Mr. Wellington is interested. He believes that the best automotive service comes from people who understand the real challenges of keeping vehicles running, not from corporate managers who've never turned a wrench. He's launching a pilot program to identify independent mechanics with the right character and skills, then provide them with the resources they need to succeed. She opened her portfolio and extracted a thick packet of documents. This is a comprehensive proposal that would transform your current operation into a Wellington Automotive Group location, while allowing you to maintain ownership and operational control. The package includes facility renovation, equipment upgrades, inventory support, marketing resources, and training programs for additional staff. End quote. Marcus accepted the packet with hands that trembled slightly. The cover page alone was more professional than anything he'd ever seen with his name on it, and the weight of the documents suggested months of preparation and planning. How is this possible? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't know anything about me, my business, my debts. Actually, we know quite a bit, Jennifer replied gently. With your permission, Mr. Wellington had our team conduct a preliminary assessment of your operation. Your reputation in the community is exceptional. Your customer loyalty is remarkable despite your limited marketing budget, and your technical skills are exactly what we're looking for in a partner. She gestured toward the packet in his hands. The first section covers the financial aspects. Wellington Automotive Group would provide all necessary capital for the renovation and expansion, structured as a long-term partnership rather than a traditional loan. You'd retain 70% ownership of the business, with Wellington maintaining a 30% stake in exchange for ongoing support and access to our corporate resources. Marcus felt dizzy as he tried to absorb the magnitude of what was being offered. The renovation alone would cost more money than he'd ever seen, and the idea of having corporate backing for inventory and equipment was beyond his wildest fantasies. What's the catch? He asked, because experience had taught him that offers this good were usually too good to be true. Jennifer laughed, a sound that seemed genuinely amused rather than condescending. Mr. Wellington asked me to expect that question. The catch, if you want to call it that, is commitment. This isn't a charity program or a get-rich-quick scheme. Wellington Automotive Group expects its partners to maintain the highest standards of service and professionalism. You'd be required to complete extensive training programs, implement our customer service protocols, and meet performance benchmarks for customer satisfaction and business growth. She turned to a different section of the packet, revealing glossy photographs of renovated garage facilities that looked nothing like Marcus's current setup. The goal is to elevate independent mechanics to compete with dealership service departments while maintaining the personal touch that makes neighborhood shops special. You'd have access to diagnostic equipment that most dealerships can't afford, along with direct relationships with parts suppliers and technical support from our corporate engineering team. Marcus studied the photographs with growing amazement. The facilities shown were spacious and well lit, with modern equipment bays and customer waiting areas that radiated professionalism and success. It was everything he'd ever dreamed of providing for his customers, and more than he'd ever dared to imagine for himself. There would be other changes as well, Jennifer continued. You'd need to hire additional staff, at least 2 certified technicians and a customer service representative. Wellington provides comprehensive training programs for new employees, along with competitive salary and benefit packages that help attract quality people. The idea of having employees, real employees with benefits and career prospects, was almost overwhelming. Marcus had always worked alone, partly by choice and partly by necessity, but the thought of building something larger, something that could provide good jobs for other people, stirred ambitions he'd buried years ago. "How long do I have to think about this?" he asked, still staring at the photographs of what his garage could become. "Take all the time you need," Jennifer replied. "But I should mention that this is the first offer under our new WEV pilot program. Mr. Wellington is personally invested in making it work, and he's prepared to provide additional support during the transition period to ensure your success." After Jennifer left, Marcus sat alone in his office with the packet spread across his desk like a roadmap to a different life. The financial projections were staggering, suggesting income levels that would not only pay his bills but allow him to save for the future, maybe even take a vacation for the first time in years. The facility plans showed a garage that could handle anything from basic maintenance to complex engine rebuilds, with customer amenities that would make waiting for service almost pleasant. But it was the section on community involvement that really captured his imagination. Wellington Automotive Group partnered with local technical schools to provide apprenticeship programs, offering young people a path into the automotive industry with real career prospects. They sponsored local racing events and classic car shows, building relationships with the enthusiast community that Marcus had always loved but never had time to engage with properly. The more he read, the more it seemed like an opportunity to become everything he'd always wanted to be, both as a mechanic and as a member of his community. The financial security would eliminate the constant stress of wondering whether he could afford to fix his own equipment, and the corporate support would give him access to training and resources that would make him a better technician. Yet doubt nagged at him like a persistent engine knock. Why him? Why now? What had David Wellington seen in their brief encounter that justified such an enormous investment in a struggling independent shop? The cynic in him wondered if this was some kind of elaborate corporate tax write-off, a way for a wealthy company to gain positive publicity by helping the little guy. That evening, Marcus called his sister Maria, the only family member he trusted with important decisions. She lived in Denver with her husband and 2 children, working as a high school counselor with a gift for seeing through pretense and getting to the heart of complicated situations. "It sounds incredible," Maria said, after Marcus had explained the offer in detail. "But you're right to be cautious. Have you researched this Wellington guy? Found out what kind of person he really is?" Marcus admitted that he hadn't, realizing that his knowledge of David Wellington extended only to their brief encounter and the impressive packet of documents. "He seemed genuine when I met him, but you're right. I should know more about who I'd be partnering with." "Do that," Maria advised. "And Marcus, don't let fear make the decision for you. You've been struggling for years, working twice as hard as anyone should have to break even. If this is legitimate, if it's really what they're offering, maybe it's time to let someone help you succeed instead of just survive." Her words stayed with him as he spent the following day researching Wellington Automotive Group and its CEO. What he found was both reassuring and humbling. David Wellington had built his company from a single location in Tucson, growing it over 25 years into one of the most respected automotive service chains in the Southwest. Customer reviews consistently praised the company's honesty and technical expertise, and industry publications regularly featured Wellington locations as examples of how to balance corporate efficiency with personal service. David Wellington himself was profiled in several business magazines as an entrepreneur who hadn't forgotten his roots. He'd started as a mechanic, working his way through technical school while supporting a young family, and had built his company on the principle that good automotive service required both technical skill and genuine concern for the customer's needs. He was known for his hands-on management style and his insistence that every Wellington location be run by someone who understood cars, not just business. The more Marcus learned, the more the offer seemed not just legitimate, but almost inevitable. Wellington had built his success on exactly the values that Marcus had always tried to embody: honesty, competence, and respect for both the customer and the craft. The pilot program wasn't charity or publicity stunt. It was a systematic effort to find people who shared those values and give them the resources to succeed. By Friday, Marcus had made his decision, though he spent one more sleepless night questioning every aspect of what he was about to commit to. The package Jennifer had left included contact information and detailed instructions for accepting the partnership offer, along with timelines for the various phases of renovation and training that would be required. Saturday morning found him in his office earlier than usual, staring at the phone and the business card that would connect him to a future he'd never dared to imagine. The garage was quiet, morning light filtering through windows that were overdue for cleaning, highlighting the worn but honest character of a place where he'd invested 15 years of his life. He thought about his father, who had built this business from nothing, and had taught Marcus that there was honor in honest work, regardless of the size of the paycheck. Roberto Rivera had never had an opportunity like this, had never even dreamed that such opportunities existed for people like them. But he had instilled in his son the values that had somehow caught David Wellington's attention, the belief that treating people right was more important than maximizing profit. With a deep breath that felt like stepping off a cliff, Marcus picked up the phone and dialed the number on Jennifer Walsh's business card. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm with what sounded like genuine pleasure at hearing from him. "Mr. Rivera, I was hoping you'd call. Have you had a chance to review our proposal?" "I have," Marcus replied, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. "And I'm interested in moving forward. When do we start?" The conversation that followed was a whirlwind of schedules and logistics, contract signings and planning meetings. Wellington Automotive Group had clearly been prepared for his acceptance, with detailed timelines already established for every phase of the transformation process. Within 2 weeks, Marcus would be meeting with architects and contractors to plan the renovation of his facility. Within a month, he'd be attending his first corporate training session in Tucson, learning the systems and procedures that would elevate his service capabilities to corporate standards. "Mr. Wellington will be pleased," Jennifer said, as they concluded their call. "He has a good feeling about this partnership, and his instincts about people are rarely wrong." After hanging up, Marcus sat in the familiar quiet of his garage, trying to absorb the magnitude of what had just happened. In the space of a phone call, he'd committed to changes that would transform every aspect of his life and business. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The weekend passed in a blur of phone calls and paperwork as the machinery of corporate partnership began to move. Marcus found himself speaking with people whose job titles he'd never heard of, all of them working to ensure that his transition into the Wellington Automotive Group family would be as smooth as possible. There were lawyers and accountants, architects and equipment specialists, each contributing their expertise to the complex process of transforming a struggling independent shop into a state-of-the-art facility. Monday brought his first meeting with the renovation team, a group of contractors who specialized in automotive facility construction. They walked through his current space with the practiced eyes of people who could envision possibilities where others saw only limitations. The head contractor, a weathered man named Rodriguez, who had clearly spent years in construction, was impressed with the solid bones of Marcus's building. "Your father knew what he was doing when he built this place," Rodriguez said, running his hand along a load-bearing beam that had supported the building for decades. "The foundation is solid. The electrical system is older but well-maintained, and the layout is actually perfect for what we want to accomplish." The plans they showed him were breathtaking in their scope and attention to detail. The single service bay would become 4, each equipped with state-of-the-art lifts and diagnostic equipment. The cramped office would be expanded into a comfortable customer waiting area with wireless internet and complimentary beverages. Most importantly, the parts storage area would be completely redesigned to accommodate the extensive inventory that Wellington locations maintained, ensuring that common repairs could be completed without delays for parts ordering. "The timeline is aggressive, but achievable," Rodriguez explained, showing Marcus a construction schedule that would have the renovation completed in 6 weeks. "Wellington has their own crews for the specialized equipment installation, and they'll coordinate with us to minimize downtime for your business." The phrase "minimize downtime" struck Marcus with sudden concern. "How long will I be completely shut down? I've got customers who depend on me, and I can't afford to lose them during the transition." Rodriguez and his team exchanged glances that suggested they'd anticipated this question. "That's the beauty of Wellington's approach," Rodriguez replied. "They've arranged for a temporary facility 3 blocks from here, fully equipped and ready for you to use during the renovation. Your customers will receive notification letters explaining the temporary relocation and the improvements being made to serve them better." The temporary facility turned out to be a former Quick Lube shop that Wellington had purchased and converted for exactly this purpose. When Marcus toured it the following day, he was amazed to find that it was actually better equipped than his current garage, with newer lifts and diagnostic equipment that would allow him to work more efficiently than ever before. "We want to make sure that your service quality actually improves during the transition," explained Tom Bradley, the Wellington operations manager who was overseeing Marcus's integration into the company. "Your customers should see this as an opportunity to experience even better service, not an inconvenience to be endured." The customer notification process proved to be another example of Wellington's attention to detail. Rather than simple form letters, each of Marcus's regular customers received a personalized message explaining the partnership and inviting them to visit the temporary facility. The letters were professionally printed on Wellington letterhead, but signed personally by Marcus, maintaining the individual touch that his customers valued while introducing them to the resources of a larger organization. Mrs. Henderson, the widow with the cleaning business, was among the first to visit the temporary location. She marveled at the modern equipment and professional appearance of the facility, but her main concern was whether Marcus would still be the one working on her truck. "Of course," Marcus assured her. "This partnership gives me better tools and support, but I'm still the same person. I'll still be here to take care of your truck and make sure it keeps running reliably." Her visible relief reminded Marcus of why he'd been hesitant about the partnership in the first place. His customers didn't just trust his business, they trusted him personally. The challenge would be maintaining those relationships while adapting to the systems and procedures that came with corporate affiliation. The training program in Tucson was an eye-opening experience that highlighted both the opportunities and challenges ahead. Marcus spent a week at Wellington's corporate headquarters, a modern facility that housed not just administrative offices, but also a complete training center with working service bays and the latest diagnostic equipment. His fellow trainees were a diverse group of mechanics from across the Southwest, each selected for the pilot program based on similar criteria to those that had brought Marcus to Wellington's attention. There was Robert, a transmission specialist from Nevada, who had been recommended by multiple customers for his honesty and expertise. There was Sarah, who had taken over her father's shop in New Mexico and had built a reputation for being one of the few mechanics who could properly diagnose modern electronic systems. And there was Carlos, whose small garage in Texas had become the go-to place for vintage car restoration, despite having equipment that dated back decades. What united them was not just mechanical skill, but a shared commitment to treating customers fairly and taking pride in their work. As they progressed through the training modules, Marcus realized that Wellington hadn't just been looking for competent mechanics, they'd been looking for people who embodied the values on which the company had been built. David Wellington himself appeared on the third day of training, not as a distant corporate figure making a ceremonial appearance, but as an active participant in the technical sessions. He worked alongside the trainees, demonstrating diagnostic techniques and sharing insights gained from decades of hands-on experience. It was clear that despite his corporate success, he remained passionate about the craft of automotive repair. During a break, Wellington approached Marcus with what seemed like genuine curiosity about how the transition was progressing. "How are you feeling about all this? It's a lot of change to absorb in a short time." Marcus considered the question carefully before responding. "Overwhelming, but in a good way. I keep thinking about all the customers I'll be able to help better. All the problems I'll be able to solve with proper equipment and training. But I'm also worried about losing the personal connection that made my shop work." End quote. Wellington nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly the balance we're trying to strike. Corporate resources with individual character. The moment we lose that personal touch, we become just another chain, and there are plenty of those already." He gestured toward the other trainees, who were engaged in animated discussions about technical challenges and customer service scenarios. Every person in this program was chosen because they understand that fixing cars is ultimately about helping people. The tools and systems we provide are just ways to do that more effectively. The final day of training included a comprehensive examination that tested not just technical knowledge, but also customer service skills and business procedures. Marcus was nervous about the business aspects, having always focused on the mechanical side of his operation, but found that many of the procedures were simply formalized versions of practices he'd already developed through experience. When the results were announced, Marcus was surprised to learn that he'd scored in the top 10% of all trainees in the program's history. The recognition was gratifying, but more important was the confidence it gave him that he could handle the responsibilities that came with being a Wellington partner. The return to Phoenix coincided with the completion of his facility renovation, and Marcus's first glimpse of the transformed garage left him speechless. Where his single service bay had struggled to accommodate modern vehicles, 4 spacious bays now offered room for everything from compact cars to full-size pickup trucks. The diagnostic equipment was more sophisticated than anything he'd ever imagined using, capable of interfacing with the complex computer systems that controlled modern engines, transmissions, and safety dial systems. The customer area was equally impressive, with comfortable seating, current magazines, and a coffee station that would make many offices envious. But it was the details that really showed Wellington's understanding of what made a good shop work. Plenty of electrical outlets for customers' devices, a clear view of the service bays so people could see their vehicles being worked on, and a dedicated area for parents with young children. The parts storage system was perhaps the most revolutionary change. Instead of the haphazard collection of shelves and boxes that had characterized Marcus's inventory management, the new system was computerized and comprehensive. Common parts for dozens of vehicle makes and models were kept in stock, automatically reordered when supplies ran low, and tracked to ensure optimal inventory levels. "It's like having a dealership parts department, but better," explained Janet Morrison, the inventory specialist who would be training Marcus's new staff. "Dealerships only stock parts for their specific brands, but Wellington locations carry components for everything on the road. If we can't fix it with parts on hand, we can get what we need overnight instead of caught, making customers wait days or weeks." The hiring process for additional staff proved to be another area where Wellington's approach impressed Marcus. Rather than simply placing want ads and hoping for the best, the company used a combination of technical testing and personality assessment to identify candidates who would fit well with both the position requirements and the shop's culture. The first hire was David Chen, a recently graduated automotive technology student who had impressed his instructors with both his technical aptitude and his genuine enthusiasm for learning. David was 22, eager and grateful for the opportunity to start his career with a shop that could offer both hands-on experience and formal training opportunities. The second technician was Maria Santos, an experienced mechanic who had been laid off when a dealership downsized their service department. Maria brought 15 years of experience with computerized diagnostic systems and a reputation for being able to solve problems that stumped other technicians. Her addition to the team meant that Marcus could handle more complex jobs while ensuring that routine maintenance was completed efficiently. The customer service representative was Linda Walsh, a local woman with experience in retail management who understood the importance of making people feel welcome and informed. Linda's role would be to greet customers, explain services and pricing, and maintain the scheduling system that kept the service bays operating at optimal efficiency. The reopening of Rivera's Auto Repair was scheduled for a Monday morning in late October, and Marcus found himself unable to sleep the night before. The facility was ready, the staff was trained, and the inventory was stocked, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to discover whether he'd made the right decision or committed himself to something beyond his capabilities. Mrs. Henderson arrived at 7:30, half an hour before the official opening time, with her truck displaying symptoms of a transmission problem that had developed over the weekend. Marcus welcomed her personally, explaining the new procedures while assuring her that he would personally handle her vehicle's diagnosis and repair. The computerized diagnostic equipment quickly identified the problem as a failing solenoid in the transmission's valve body, a component that would have taken hours to diagnose with his old equipment. The parts inventory system showed that the necessary component was in stock, and the repair could be completed the same day, instead of requiring a multi-day wait for parts delivery. "This is incredible," Mrs. Henderson said as Marcus explained the diagnosis and repair procedure. "You found the problem in 10 minutes, and you already have the part I need. It used to take days just to figure out what was wrong." By the end of the first week, word had spread throughout the community about the dramatic improvements at Rivera's Auto Repair. Customers who had been loyal despite the limitations of the old facility were amazed by the new capabilities, and new customers began arriving based on recommendations from satisfied clients. The financial impact was immediate and substantial. With 4 service bays instead of 1, Marcus could handle multiple customers simultaneously without creating bottlenecks. The improved diagnostic capabilities meant faster problem identification and more accurate repair estimates. Most importantly, the comprehensive parts inventory eliminated most of the delays that had previously frustrated both Marcus and his customers. But the real validation came from the customers themselves, longtime clients who expressed genuine happiness at seeing Marcus succeed. They appreciated the improved facilities and faster service, but they were most pleased to see that the personal attention and honest dealing that had earned their loyalty remained unchanged. 3 months after the reopening, Marcus received a visit from David Wellington, who wanted to see firsthand how the pilot program was progressing. The CEO arrived unannounced on a busy Thursday afternoon, observing the operation from the customer waiting area before introducing himself to the staff. "How has it been?" Wellington asked as he and Marcus toured the facility together. "Any regrets about taking the leap?" Marcus considered the question while watching his team work efficiently on 4 different vehicles simultaneously. David Chen was performing a routine maintenance service with the careful precision of someone building good habits. Maria Santos was diagnosing a complex electrical problem with equipment that made such challenges manageable rather than impossible. Linda Walsh was explaining repair options to a customer with the patience and knowledge that made people feel confident in their decisions. "No regrets," Marcus replied finally. "This is what I always wanted my shop to be. I just didn't know how to get there on my own." Wellington nodded with obvious satisfaction. "That's exactly what we hope to hear. You're not just meeting our expectations, you're exceeding them. Customer satisfaction scores are in the top 5% of all Wellington locations, and your financial performance is ahead of projections." He paused to watch Maria Santos explain a diagnostic procedure to David Chen, noting the easy mentorship that was developing between the experienced technician and the recent graduate. "But the real success is seeing that you haven't lost what made your shop special in the first place. Your customers still trust you personally, and now you have the resources to serve them better than ever." The conversation reminded Marcus of how much his life had changed since that morning, when a well-dressed stranger had asked to borrow a torque wrench. The simple act of lending a tool had opened a door to possibilities he'd never imagined, transforming not just his business, but his entire sense of what was achievable. As Wellington prepared to leave, he offered one final observation that stayed with Marcus long after the CEO's departure. "You know, I've been thinking about that day when we first met. You didn't lend me that tool because you thought I might be someone important. You did it because it was the right thing to do, because you understand that we're all in this together. That's the kind of character you can't teach, and it's exactly what makes this partnership work." 6 months later, Rivera's Auto Repair had become a showcase location for Wellington Automotive Group, regularly hosting visits from other mechanics considering the pilot program. Marcus found himself in the boss, unexpected role of mentor, sharing his experience with independent shop owners who were facing the same decision he'd wrestled with months earlier. The transformation had exceeded even Wellington's optimistic projections. Revenue had increased by 400%, but more importantly, Marcus was able to provide services that his community had never had access to before. Complex diagnostic work that previously required trips to expensive dealerships could now be handled locally, with the personal attention that only an independent shop could provide. The success had attracted attention from beyond the automotive industry. The local Chamber of Commerce featured Rivera's Auto Repair in their newsletter as an example of how corporate partnership could strengthen rather than diminish local businesses. A regional business magazine ran a feature story about the pilot program, highlighting Marcus's journey from struggling independent mechanic to successful entrepreneur. But the recognition that meant the most came from his customers, particularly the longtime clients who remembered the limitations of the old facility. They expressed genuine pride in seeing Marcus succeed, often bringing friends and family members to show off their mechanic and the impressive facility he now operated. Mrs. Henderson had become something of an unofficial ambassador for the shop, regularly recommending Rivera's Auto Repair to other small business owners who understood the importance of reliable transportation. Her cleaning business had grown substantially, partly because her truck was now more dependable than ever, but also because she had more time to focus on her work instead of worrying about mechanical problems. The apprenticeship program that Wellington had established through local technical schools was bringing young people into the shop regularly, giving Marcus the opportunity to pass on not just technical skills, but also the values that had guided his career. David Chen had proven to be an exceptional student, absorbing knowledge with the enthusiasm of someone who truly loved the work. And Marcus had begun preparing him for additional responsibilities within the operation. Maria Santos had surprised everyone, including herself, by expressing interest in eventually opening her own Wellington franchise location. Her experience at Rivera's had shown her that the corporate partnership model offered the best of both worlds: independence with support, individual character with professional resources. Marcus was pleased to provide a reference and consulting assistance as she began exploring opportunities in a neighboring community. The personal financial security that came with the partnership's success had allowed Marcus to help his sister Maria's family with college expenses for her children, fulfilling a promise he'd made years earlier when such support seemed impossible. He'd also been able to purchase a modest house in a better neighborhood, leaving behind the small apartment above the old garage that had been his home for too many years. But perhaps the most significant change was in Marcus himself. The constant stress of financial uncertainty had been replaced by confidence in his ability to handle whatever challenges arose. He slept better, smiled more often, and found time for interests he'd neglected during the years of barely scraping by. He'd even begun attending classic car shows, not as someone who could only admire other people's projects, but as a professional who could appreciate the craftsmanship while building relationships within the enthusiast community. One evening, as Marcus was reviewing the day's service reports and planning the next day's schedule, Linda Walsh knocked on his office door with a smile that suggested good news. "The customer satisfaction surveys came back from corporate," she said, handing him a folder of documents. "We scored perfect ratings in every category, and the comment section is filled with praise for both the technical quality and the personal service." Marcus read through the comments with growing amazement. Customers consistently mentioned feeling treated honestly and fairly, having problems explained clearly, and receiving service that exceeded their expectations. Many specifically noted that the shop felt both professional and personal, exactly the balance that Wellington had sought to achieve. One comment stood out among the rest, written by a customer whose transmission repair had been completed ahead of schedule and under budget. "Rivera's Auto Repair proves that you don't have to choose between corporate quality and personal service. Marcus and his team make you feel like family while fixing your car better than the dealership ever could." The comment reminded Marcus of the conversation with David Wellington about maintaining personal connections while leveraging corporate resources. It seemed that the balance was not just achievable but could become a competitive advantage in an industry where customers often felt like anonymous transaction numbers. As the first anniversary of the partnership approached, Marcus began preparing for a celebration that would acknowledge not just his own success, but the contributions of everyone who had made the transformation possible. The event would include his staff, his customers, representatives from Wellington Automotive Group, and members of the community who had supported him throughout the years of struggle and growth. David Wellington had agreed to speak at the celebration, but Marcus knew that the real story belonged to the customers who had remained loyal during the transition, and the employees who had embraced the opportunity to be part of something special. Their faith in the partnership had made its success possible, and their continued enthusiasm was the best indicator that the pilot program was achieving its intended goals. The morning of the anniversary celebration dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for the outdoor barbecue that Marcus had planned in the parking lot of his transformed facility. The contrast between the current professional appearance of V. Rivera's auto repair and the struggling operation it had been just 1 year earlier was stark enough to make the achievement feel almost surreal. Wellington arrived early, bringing with him several other executives from the corporate office who wanted to see firsthand what the pilot program had accomplished. But he also came with news that would expand the program's impact far beyond Marcus's individual success. Based on what we've learned here, Wellington announced during his remarks to the gathered crowd, Wellington Automotive Group is expanding the pilot program to include 50 additional independent shops over the next 2 years. Marcus has proven that our model works, and we're committed to helping other deserving mechanics achieve similar success. The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause from the crowd. But Marcus felt a particular sense of pride knowing that his willingness to take a chance on an unexpected opportunity had opened doors for dozens of other mechanics who were facing the same challenges he had overcome. Mrs. Henderson, now driving a newer truck that she'd been able to afford thanks to her business growth, captured the sentiment of many longtime customers when she spoke during the informal testimonial session. Marcus always took good care of us, even when he didn't have much to work with. Now he has everything he needs to take even better care of us, and we couldn't be happier for him. As the celebration continued into the evening, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. A simple act of kindness, lending a tool to a stranger without expectation of reward, had set in motion changes that transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. The success hadn't come without challenges and moments of doubt, but the partnership with Wellington had provided not just financial resources, but also the confidence that comes from being part of something larger than oneself. Marcus was no longer just trying to survive as an independent mechanic. He was thriving as a valued partner in a company that shared his commitment to honest service and technical excellence. Late that night, after the last guests had departed and the cleanup was complete, Marcus stood alone in his garage, surrounded by the tools and equipment that represented both his past struggles and his current success. The torque wrench that had started it all sat in its designated place within the organized tool storage system. No longer the most valuable piece of equipment in the shop, but still holding special significance as the catalyst for everything that had followed. He thought about his father, who had built the original garage with his own hands, and had taught Marcus that there was dignity in honest work regardless of the circumstances. Roberto Rivera had never lived to see his son's success, but Marcus felt certain that he would have been proud of the way the partnership had preserved the values that mattered most, while providing the resources to serve customers better than ever before. The phone rang, interrupting his contemplation, and Marcus was surprised to hear David Wellington's voice on the other end. The CEO was calling from his car as he drove back to Tucson, wanting to share his impressions of the anniversary celebration and discuss plans for the expanded pilot program. "Today was everything I hoped it would be when we started this partnership," Wellington said. "You've created something special here, Marcus. A place where people feel valued and cared for, not just processed efficiently. That's what we want every Wellington location to become." The conversation lasted nearly an hour, covering topics ranging from technical training programs to customer service innovations that could be implemented across the entire Wellington network. Marcus found himself contributing ideas and insights that would influence the direction of a multi-million-dollar corporation, a responsibility he never could have imagined when he was struggling to keep his single IF Bay Garage operational. When the call ended, Marcus realized that his relationship with Wellington had evolved from grateful recipient of corporate generosity to respected partner whose opinions carried weight in strategic planning. Discussions. The transformation reflected not just his own growth, but also Wellington's commitment to treating partners as equals, rather than subordinates. The following months brought a steady stream of visitors to Rivera's auto repair, mechanics from across the region who wanted to see what the Wellington partnership looked like in practice. Marcus welcomed them all, sharing both the benefits and the challenges of the transformation with the honesty that had characterized his approach to business from the beginning. Many of the visiting mechanics were dealing with the same issues that had plagued Marcus before the partnership: outdated equipment, limited inventory, financial pressure, and the constant struggle to compete with better funded competitors. Some were skeptical about corporate partnerships, having heard stories of independent shops that lost their character after being absorbed by larger organizations. Marcus addressed their concerns directly, acknowledging that the partnership required significant changes, but emphasizing that the core values of honest service and personal attention had not only survived, but had been strengthened by access to better resources. He showed them financial records that demonstrated the dramatic improvement in both profitability and customer satisfaction, but he also introduced them to longtime customers who could attest that the personal touch they valued had been preserved. The most compelling evidence was the shop itself, operating at full capacity with 4 technicians providing efficient, high-quality service while maintaining the kind of customer relationships that made people feel like family rather than transactions. Visitors could see that the Wellington partnership had enhanced rather than diminished what made an independent shop special. As word of the program's success spread throughout the automotive service industry, Marcus began receiving invitations to speak at trade conferences and technical schools. He found himself in the unexpected position of being recognized as an expert, not just in automotive repair, but in business transformation and customer service excellence. The speaking engagements gave him the opportunity to advocate for the values that had guided his career: treating customers honestly, taking pride in quality work, and understanding that fixing cars was ultimately about helping people solve problems that affected their daily lives. He spoke passionately about the potential for corporate partnerships to strengthen rather than weaken independent businesses, provided that both sides remained committed to shared values. One particularly memorable presentation was at the annual conference of the Independent Automotive Service Association, where Marcus addressed an audience of shop owners who were facing increasing pressure from consolidation in the industry. Many were concerned about maintaining their independence while competing with well-funded corporate chains. "The question isn't whether you want to remain independent," Marcus told the audience. "The question is whether you want to remain ineffective. True independence comes from having the resources to serve your customers as well as they deserve, not from struggling alone with outdated equipment and limited capabilities." He shared his own story, emphasizing that the Wellington partnership had made him more independent, not less. By eliminating the financial constraints that had previously limited his ability to invest in his business and serve his community effectively. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with dozens of shop owners approaching him after the presentation to learn more about the Wellington program and similar opportunities. Several mentioned that they had been considering selling their businesses to corporate chains simply because they couldn't see any other path to financial stability and growth. Marcus referred them all to Wellington's expansion team, but he also emphasized that any partnership decision should be based on alignment of values rather than just financial considerations. The success of his own transformation had depended as much on the cultural fit between his approach to business and Wellington's corporate philosophy as on the resources that the partnership provided. 2 years after the initial partnership, Rivera's Auto Repair had become the template for Wellington's expansion strategy, with elements of Marcus's operation being replicated at dozens of new locations across the Southwest. The success had established Marcus as a key advisor in the selection and development of new partners, a role that took him throughout the region, but always brought him back to the Phoenix garage that remained the heart of his operation. The financial rewards of his success had enabled Marcus to purchase the building that housed his garage, eliminating rent payments and providing long-term security for the business. He'd also been able to establish a scholarship fund at the local technical school, providing opportunities for students who might otherwise be unable to afford automotive training. But the most meaningful measure of success remained the daily interactions with customers who trusted him with their transportation needs and the satisfaction of solving problems that kept their lives moving smoothly. Whether it was diagnosing a complex electronic issue on a luxury sedan or performing routine maintenance on Mrs. Henderson's work truck, Marcus approached each job with the same commitment to excellence that had characterized his work from the beginning. The transformation had also strengthened his relationships within the community, as local business owners and residents took pride in seeing one of their own achieve remarkable success, while maintaining the character and values that had earned their respect. Rivera's Auto Repair had become a symbol of what was possible when hard work and integrity were combined with opportunity and support. Looking back on the journey from that morning, when David Wellington had asked to borrow a torque wrench, Marcus often marveled at how a simple act of generosity had opened the door to changes that exceeded his wildest dreams. The lesson he'd learned was that character reveals itself in small moments, but those moments can have consequences that extend far beyond anything that seems possible at the time. The pilot program that had begun with his partnership had grown into a major initiative that was transforming the automotive service industry throughout the region. Independent mechanics who had been struggling to survive were now thriving as Wellington partners, providing better service to their communities while achieving financial security they had never thought possible. Marcus's role in the program's development had evolved from grateful recipient to strategic advisor, and he took seriously the responsibility of helping other mechanics navigate the transformation process successfully. He maintained regular contact with new partners, offering both technical advice and emotional support during the challenging adjustment period. The success had also attracted attention from other corporate chains interested in replicating Wellington's approach, but Marcus remained loyal to the company that had believed in him when no one else would have considered him a viable partner. His relationship with David Wellington had developed into a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence in automotive service. As the third anniversary of the partnership approached, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had changed while the core of who he was remained constant. He was still the same person who believed in treating customers honestly and taking pride in quality work, but now he had the resources and support to live those values more fully than ever before. The garage that had once struggled to keep a single service bay busy now operated 4 bays at capacity, with a waiting list of customers who preferred the personal attention and honest dealing that Rivera's Auto Repair provided. The staff had grown to include 6 full-time employees, each contributing specialized skills that enhanced the shop's capabilities. David Chen had developed into an exceptional diagnostic technician, earning certifications in multiple automotive systems and beginning to train newer employees. Maria Santos had successfully opened her own Wellington franchise location in a neighboring city, maintaining regular contact with Marcus as she built her own success story. Linda Walsh had been promoted to service manager, overseeing the scheduling and customer service functions that kept the operation running smoothly. The success had created opportunities that extended beyond the automotive service industry. Marcus had been invited to join the board of directors of the local Chamber of Commerce, where he advocated for policies that supported small business development. He'd also become a mentor in the Chamber's entrepreneurship program, sharing his experience with other business owners who were seeking to grow their operations. But the most rewarding aspect of his transformation remained the daily satisfaction of providing excellent service to customers who had become friends over the years of shared challenges and mutual support. Their success in maintaining reliable transportation contributed to their own business and personal achievements, creating a network of positive outcomes that extended throughout the community. The story of Rivera's Auto Repair had become a local legend, regularly cited as proof that dreams could come true for those who combined hard work with integrity and remained open to unexpected opportunities. Marcus was proud of what he'd accomplished, but he remained humble about his role in a transformation that had required support and belief from many people. On quiet evenings after the shop closed, Marcus sometimes stood in his garage and thought about the journey that had brought him to this point. The torque wrench that had started it all remained in its place, among the hundreds of tools that now filled the organized storage systems, no longer unique in quality, but forever special in significance. The lesson he'd learned was simple but profound. Treating people with kindness and respect, even when there's no apparent benefit, creates possibilities that can transform lives in ways that seem impossible at the time. A moment of generosity to a stranger had opened doors to a future that exceeded his wildest dreams, proving that character matters more than circumstances in determining what's ultimately achievable. The success of Rivera's auto repair and the Wellington Partnership Program continued to inspire mechanics throughout the region, demonstrating that independence and corporate support could coexist in ways that strengthened both individual businesses and the communities they served. Marcus's willingness to share his experience and advocate for others facing similar challenges had helped dozens of mechanics achieve their own transformations. As he locked the doors of his successful garage each evening, Marcus carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that a simple act of lending a tool to a stranger had created ripple effects that continued to spread, touching lives and creating opportunities in ways that would continue long into the future. The mechanic who had once worried about keeping the lights on had become a catalyst for change that was transforming an entire industry, one act of kindness at a time.